Should I keep looking at the camera?
Yeah. Alex here with a high conflict child custody video on meeting Brittany, my spouse. A few things that I wanted to mention are it's easy to talk about interviewing your own spouse on your YouTube channel, but when you actually start to actually sit down and do it, it's not what you expect, and not in a bad way. It was initially it was hard to ask her questions that I knew would invoke emotions. And the other thing that I realized was both of us really didn't think about these things a whole lot more anymore. This is in our past, this is years ago. So it brought back a lot of memories, not just for her, but for me. And the other thing that I realized is that usually the way I approach videos is to do multiple takes and use the best take. But when we started to go through this, it was more of a dialogue, and it came off so natural that I decided that I was going to edit it as minimally as possible. We only did one take. We didn't retake anything. There were still some flubs where I got a question out of order, and so there will be still a few edits when I realize that and I correct the order. But it was actually something that I intended to edit heavily, and I'm going to do the exact opposite. I'm going to edit it very little, and in the end I think it's going to come off as very authentic. And it's interesting because as I got about 2/3, not even 2/3, maybe 1/3 into it, I realized that we just had a good flow, and so I was just going to publish it mostly as is, and that's what we're about to go into right now. Before we get into it, I want to mention that we do intend to do a live stream together where you guys can ask her questions live, but that's not going to be something that occurs until I forgot how many subscribers the channel needs before I actually commit to something like that, but it's on the website. So if you want to take a look, just look at the upcomings tab and just look for a live stream with my spouse. And I think at this point we can actually go ahead and go into the interview. Tell us about the story when he was on the stool and he started crying.
Okay, so it was after I picked him up from school one day on a visitation visit, and I was making him a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. He was really into those at the time, and I remember turning to start making it, and I grabbed his chips and everything, and I turned back around to hand it to him, and he was crying. And not very loud at all. I didn't hear him when my back was turned, but I saw him wiping his tears when I turned around, and I asked him, what's wrong, Arnie? Why are you crying? And he said, don't worry, Brittany, these are happy tears. So I remember that being kind of a warning sign for me, or just a red flag, I don't even want to say it was a warning sign or a red flag. That's probably, it was just noted. It was interesting because it was a very simple thing that I was doing. I was just making him, lunch, his favorite lunch after school on our visitation day. But
did he explain why it was happy tears?
He didn't. He didn't explain it. He never really explained much of anything. It was,
How many months did it take for you to even bring that up to me? Wasn't it quite a while, or was it right away?
I don't think it was that long after. It made enough of an impression on me that I did bring it up to you.
Tell us what you thought about him when you first met
him. So when I first met him, we were dating, and I had come over on our first date to your house, our apartment, and he was really sweet. It was about ready to be his bedtime, so we sat on the couch together for a minute. We were off doing something, and he sat with me, and we were talking about his name, and he thought it was just amazing that I knew how it was spelled, because a lot of people spell it Arnie with a Y, and I was like, I-E. He's like, how did you know? But we had corresponded before, so I explained, I'm your dad's friend, and I just knew how your name was spelled. I don't remember exactly, but he was a sweet boy that first initial meeting. Not to say he wasn't always sweet in the future, but I think it was in later visits, especially when Dad wasn't around, that I got a different side of him. I remember because I initially started as a babysitter for him, and I remember the first time I babysat him, I thought it would be sweet to just take him out, get him out of the house I had to go to Walmart for something anyway, and he liked these little 5-packs of cars. So we went there to pick up my stuff, and we grabbed him a 5-pack, but it was...
That's literally what he called it.
He called him a 5-pack, and it was like a completely different side of him.
Yeah.
He was running all over Walmart. Like, I couldn't keep him under control. It was insane. It was a side of him I hadn't seen yet, and I'm not the type of babysitter to tolerate that, you know?
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, I like your dad. I'm thinking this in my head, I really like your father, but this isn't gonna fly. So I'm like, Arnie, you cannot do that, you know? And I did the whole babysitting thing.
Yeah.
Anyway, babysitter thing. He got the point. And he mellowed out. And I also learned I had to keep a hold of him. I couldn't let his hand go. We get home, and he's a lot better. You know, we're watching TV, hanging out. As soon as Dad came home, he was like, Dad, let's go. You know, he was ready to run out the door because he knew he had gotten in trouble with me with the behavior. And, of course, I told you about it. And
Yeah.
that's about all I remember of that.
Yeah. One of the things that I noticed was how, at least this took a while for me to notice, but I noticed how he would tell you things that he wouldn't tell me. I kind of realized he must have thought of it as a sort of loophole, because I know for sure that he was told by my ex not to tell me anything. It was the whole sworn to secrecy thing, and I wondered sometimes maybe that's because he feels like he can tell you because that's a loophole, because technically he's not telling me. What did you think of the fact that he would tell you things that he wouldn't tell me, that he confided in you?
I didn't really think much about that he hadn't been telling you. I just assumed it was because I picked him up, you know? I spent a lot of time with him. Even when you were home, you were busy doing homework or working, you know? I had the luxury of being able to just focus on him. So I think we just, you know, created a rapport. And, you know, naturally, I asked him questions, not about what happens at home, but just about his life, you know, school. And he'd bring up sort of, you know, small things like, oh, I have this stuffed animal at home, or, you know, in the future we're going to get this cat, or stuff like that. So I think I broke down barriers just by becoming a friend, really.
Yeah.
That's all I was attempting to do, was getting to know him.
What made you want to be so involved in his homework and schoolwork in general?
Well, you know, when I decided to become your partner, and perhaps in the future your wife, you know, he was with us, you know. I felt like it was part of my duty to kind of help with with his education. I did feel lucky at the time, though, because I felt, you know, this isn't so bad. I'm the stepmom. You know, Dad has got the hard part and Mom has got the hard part.
Yeah.
I'm just a stepmom, so I can just kind of help where it's needed.
Yeah.
That's what I thought was going to happen.
Right.
Right,
And we're
so-
going to go into that later on in the list. So tell us about the time when you had the exchange at the VA hospital.
Okay. So at the VA hospital, it was after our honeymoon, and I was totally sunburned so bad on my back. I could barely walk. I couldn't move around hardly. And that being said, I was exhausted, and I overslept a little. And so when I woke up, I immediately texted Monica and let her know, hey, I'm on my way. And unfortunately, she had to bring him to her work temporarily, but I just wasn't moving around a lot. I could barely walk. So anyway, long story short, I get to the VA and I walk in the front doors, and it's empty. It's the VA hospital. I haven't been to many of them, but this one was pretty empty, and the staff was probably just looking for something to do. So they came up to me, or from the desk, said, hey, you know, can I help you with anything? And I'm like, you know, I'm here to pick up Arnie from Monica Farrar. And they were like, oh, okay, no worry, we'll get her up here. And I'm like, okay. So they called her, and I waited. I took a seat in the waiting room, took a few minutes, and then I first I hear, and then I see her walking. Sorry, it gets me worked up.
It's okay. It's authentic, so.
Yeah. So we see her walking down the hall with him in her hand. And I mean, okay, she was walking fast. He had to kind of jog to keep up with her. He's being yanked by her. And she doesn't say a word to me. She goes directly out the automatic doors, and I noticed that there are people with her, a couple men. I didn't really think much of it at the time. So anyway, I realized she's outside, so I'm like trying to like get myself up out of the seat, and I'm hobbling. Mm-hmm. It was kind of embarrassing. I'm like walking like outside the door, and I get there, and she's holding Armie's hand. The two gentlemen are on either side of her. I'm not sure, but they were standing there, and she just started yelling at me. You know, you will never come to my work and have me paged again.
This was so strange because she actually I told her you were going.
I told her.
She knew.
I told her I was going. I sent the text. I was like, hey, Monica, I'm running late. She's like, oh, okay, well, he's at work. And I thought, for a second, I thought, oh my God, she's talking to me. I'm going to like make a joke or try to relate to her, maybe get her to relax. Like, I'm not trying to be his mom. I'm okay with stepmom. Yeah. I was just like, oh my God, she's talking to me. I can be cool. And like, you know, maybe if I can just penetrate her bubble and you guys are still, I didn't know what to do. I just wanted us to be cool for Armie's sake. Mm-hmm. Anyway, so I was thinking everything was going to be normal when we got there. And so anyway, I'm like, I walk out and she's yelling, you will never have me paged again. Which, okay, if that was the problem, you should have told me on my way there. But first of all, I walked in and I would have been fine just saying, hey, I'm here, you know. Yeah. But you didn't tell me where to wait. You didn't tell me to stay outside. Yeah. So I walked in and they were like, hey, can we help you? They wanted something, you know, they were doing their job. Anyway.
I didn't realize this at the time, but now that you're explaining this to me, it's clear that she was doing to you what she always used to do to me, which was she didn't want to explain all those details to you, because if she would have explained all those details to you, you would have complied with it. Mm-hmm. So the only way for there to be a conflict was to not tell you any of that stuff, so that therefore
create a conflict
something to fight about. And I'm sure she wanted you to argue with her in front of those people, like you were being set up basically.
Well, I haven't finished the story.
Definitely continue.
Okay, so I didn't argue.
That's what I was thinking she would think.
Yeah, you know, she probably wanted to fight. I was really just kind of confused, and I was
That's what it is. Like, keep going.
I was like, I don't even know what I said to her when she, I don't remember. Yeah. But I was like thinking in my head, okay, I gotta go. I don't want to argue with her. I know I need to leave with Arnie. So perhaps this wasn't the best thing for me to do in hindsight, but what I attempted to do is walk up to Arnie, grab the hand she didn't have, and just kind of initiate the kind of exchange. Mm-hmm. You know, it wasn't aggressive. I wasn't, you know, I could barely walk as it is. I wasn't going to attack anybody. I was just like, oh, okay, I'll call you, whatever. Mm-hmm. And I won't have you paged. And I went to reach for his hand, and she yanked him back. Don't assault me, or I don't know what it was. Something crazy. Yeah. You will not touch me, or something like that. And I'm like, okay. So I just turned around and started walking to my car. I'm like, I'm not messing with this. Yeah. So, and the two gentlemen never said anything. I learned later that they were supposed to be witnesses, one of which couldn't speak English and had a hard time understanding what was even going on. He served no purpose. So I don't know. She was just walking down the hall with Arnie and was just like, hey, guys, follow me. One of them looked like a doctor, which you know, me paging her was the least of her embarrassment when she asks him to be a witness. She made it a scene, like you said.
Yeah, it was, oh my gosh, hindsight is so powerful. Because at the time, it's bewilderment. It's like, what is going on? It's so confusing.
And her texts were not confrontational. Right. So I did not show up thinking she was going to, you know, I wasn't.
It's a shock power. Anyway, the part of what you said was the witnesses. And so I guess we could lead into what you think of when the VA police called you.
So the VA police called and said, you know, we heard there was an incident. This is for our filed a report, and we wanted to give you the opportunity to come down and fill out a report in response or in defense. I don't remember the verbiage he used, but I was like, oh yeah, I'll go fill something out, tell him my side, you know, because you know, it needs to be heard. Nothing bad happened. And it was, I don't know if she knew this or whatever, but as I got down there, the VA officer said there was nothing they could do. She stood in a place where there were absolutely no cameras.
That was on purpose.
There were no
I
cameras.
was about to ask you that.
Yeah, she stood in a place where there were no cameras, and she brought 2 witnesses. Which, if you know, if you think about it, if you think about it, you don't need witnesses if you're in front of a camera.
Right.
So I was like, okay, well, and that's when the VA officer was like, you know, and one of the guys can't even speak English. He really wasn't any help to the situation. And the guy straight up said, I can't say who was right or who was wrong. Maybe you shouldn't have reached for his hand. And I probably shouldn't have, but I wanted to get the hell out of there. And I knew I needed to take Arnie. Hindsight. I should have just walked out the door, listened to her yell at me, and then walked away. Because what happened after I reached for his hand to initiate the exchange, she said, no, blah, blah, blah. I was like, I'm not fighting it.
No.
I walked away, and she released Arnie, and Arnie came running up, Brittany, wait! So she knew she couldn't keep him. She just wanted to fight. She wanted me to fight her.
Well, actually,
verbally,
I'm sure. If you hadn't done that, I think if you would have just turned around and left, she would claim that you didn't want him. So I think ironically here, you accidentally did the right thing.
That wouldn't have made sense, because if I didn't want him, I wouldn't have made the. I wouldn't have picked him up.
This is between 2 rational people.
Yeah.
So this would have come up probably in court. But you know what's crazy is we've talked about this story at least 10, 20 times, and this is the first time that you mentioned that there were 2 witnesses, and then I mentioned, I bet you there were no cameras, or I meant to say that, and then that's when you said that the police guy said there were no cameras there, and it's crazy how you can talk about something 10, 20 times, and you'll still figure things out that all of a sudden make so much more sense. It's amazing what you can do with hindsight. So, the next question is, when you first met me, you were wondering why the conflict was so bad with my ex. And I remember thinking to myself, there's no way to explain this to you without coming off as a crazy person. And I remember saying, while I go to work, read all my emails. And I opened up my email, and I left, and I went to work, and I came home, and you were done reading them. And tell me what you think about the process of going through the emails. What do you even think about the fact that I just said I can't answer your question, read for yourself?
It's true. You can't put that to words without you cannot put that into words without coming off yourself a little crazy, because normal people don't act that way, especially mothers of young children. I don't know how far back those emails went, but I do know I had to take breaks because they were so visceral and like ongoing that it got to a point, and you know, I had a lot of feelings for you, so it was like I hadn't learned I didn't understand the whole dysfunction yet. So I was like getting worked up. It was like hurting my heart. You know, I had to stop a few times to just regroup, but it was insane. You definitely, when you're done reading that, she doesn't care about her son. It's clear. Right? It's just about getting you. It was just about knocking you down.
Right. I remember thinking to myself when I would start my docket series, I was going to get into all these crazy emails, and I am surprised with how few emails I sent to the court, because it's like you said. I mean, I realize now, as I'm in part 70 whatever of my docket series, that there would just have been so many, it would have just made the court want to throw up. But I had this idea in my head that I was going to do my docket series and people would see all these emails, and they have seen some emails, but they haven't seen the sort of round and round, never-ending.
Do you even have those still?
I unfortunately don't, because I closed Yahoo. Okay, next question. Tell about the time when you called the courthouse about not being allowed. Okay, so a little bit of context here. We were in court to modify physical custody, and I think it went over, I'm not sure now.
Modify, oh yeah, it was just cool.
All I know is somebody had to pick him up. I was in court, I was a party, you were the witness. You already testified, you left. Tell them what it was about, or tell them about the time when...
Okay,
yeah,
so prior to going to court for this modification for physical custody, it was our vacation time. We sent an email to Monica letting her know, hey, we're claiming stay for vacation, I believe, right? And she chooses not to, whether she reads the email or not, she always claims she never received it, she never opened it, she didn't see it. So we never heard back from her about this and just assumed she didn't want to respond, but she got the email. I mean, that's all we can do. So I went to pick him up from school, and I pull in and park, and I see him, I get out and he sees me and he's coming over to say hi, and I get back into the car and I'm backing up, and all of a sudden in front of my car I see this woman with her hands up like this, and I'm like, what? And I'm like, God, it's her. I didn't see her, so I thought she got the email, right? Got the memo.
There's 2 emails.
Right. I didn't remember that, but I thought, anyway, so
Yeah.
she throws her hands up in the air, and I can't honestly remember what else she said. I just remember looking back and seeing her reaching for Arnie and trying to pull him from the car.
She succeeded.
She did. She did. And what freaked me out the most is I was in drive. I was getting ready to move. Like, it happened very quickly.
Yeah.
So I knew I'm not going to fight the mother of this child, of Arnie. It's just not it was not my place of time to do that.
Yeah.
So I just threw the car in park. I let her take him, and she took him, and then I went home.
You were livid.
Mm-hmm.
But
So this was like what's the I'm bad at expression.
The straw that broke the camel's back.
I was pissed off. I was very pissed. Like, I was hot. I was so sick of being treated like crap by this woman who, if she'd give me the time of day, I would have let her know, dude, I understand my role and I'm not going to step on your feet. I am completely comfortable with being a stepmom. I never came into this relationship trying to take over. Mm-hmm. So I was just done. So I called Alex.
You were the luckiest person on the planet, because so many people go through this and they have no outlet, including me all those years. But you had court the next day.
I had court the next day. Well, not only that, but that night after it happened, I called Alex and I was like, I can't handle. I don't know what I said, but I was pissed. I was so mad. Yeah. So anyway, I think that's when Alex sent emails to her saying, hey, yo, we requested these days. This was our visitation day. She eventually decided to acknowledge that she received the email, or actually read the email, and she freaked out. I think she freaked out a little. And she said, oh, you can come pick him up now. Go ahead.
I have some hindsight on this. I think she saw the emails, both of them. Maybe there's a chance she only saw the second one, but she saw the email. She knew. And she was hoping there would be something that she could use, that I suspect.
Cause of conflict, right?
Well, I think that she knew she was done for the next day. Mm-hmm. And if she did know that, then she was right, because she was done for the next day, and she had to cook something up. And it would also create another opportunity for an exchange and another opportunity for something to go wrong. So I remember that she tried to say, okay, never mind, I shouldn't have taken him from Brittany. Here you go, come get him. And I was like, we got court tomorrow. We'll just get him tomorrow. Anyway, there was another question that was going to talk about your testimony, but since we're kind of getting into that, let's go straight into the next day. You are on the stand. Before you explain...
So I'm actually waiting. We're all waiting to go into the courtroom, and I remember being so nervous, like my palms are sweating. Yeah. And it's weird because I don't have to lie. I don't have to do anything but tell the truth, but I was just so nervous. I'm like, I'm not going to be able to talk. And then she shows up. I remember seeing her show up while we're all waiting. She's got a stack of... She could barely carry all of the notes that were going to help her.
She kept all these journals.
She had gotten rid of her attorney for some reason.
No, she couldn't afford her. Her attorney dumped her.
So at that point when I saw her, I kind of calmed down a little. I don't know how that works. It just did. Yeah. And then everybody goes into the courtroom, and I remember I'm sitting, still waiting to be called in. I'm sitting next to our lovely witness, Miss Molina, Dr. Molina, and she was amazing to talk to. Yeah. And then she goes in, and I'm waiting by myself. I'm like, oh gosh, okay, I'm getting nervous. Yeah. I get in there, and I get on the stand, and as soon as I sat down, my nerves were good. I don't know what that is. I don't know what it was, but I was like, okay, let's go. Let's do this, right? And I think a lot of it was because I could see her sitting there, and
She doesn't control anything in there.
Well, she did. She thought she did because she was representing herself. So she was probably thinking, I can't wait to just trip her up because she got to cross-examine me.
Yeah.
It was interesting.
You were like retribution incarnate. I remember my lawyer and I were like telling you not to get mad and not to go crazy. And
Before?
You got so mad, and it was actually so believed. The judge believed you, and they usually don't believe spouses, but
Well, the thing is like, as I'm getting worked up, I can feel my blood pressure rising, and I was like, as long as I use my words and I don't yell,
Yeah.
But if I get worked up, it's okay, you're allowed to. And I figured if I'm going to get worked up at any time through this whole ordeal, right here in court in front of the judge is the place to do it, because nobody can make anything up. So I'm like, okay, watch your language and your words and don't yell. And you know what? I think I hit those. But I remember looking over to Andrea, the attorney,
yeah.
and she was like, calm down. I was like, oh, don't even tell me. Don't even tell me to calm down right now. But it wasn't that bad. It was, and obviously it wasn't, because the judge never once said, hey, Brittany, relax,
I think you sounded so sincere that the judge didn't want to stop you. And it's crazy because I thought it was bad, because I thought you were getting so mad, and I just dealt with the problem by staying as calm as possible.
But the thing is you had to listen to what was being asked and how I was answering. I was getting mad.
Yeah.
But I don't think I was tripping up on my words. I was being honest. And some of the things that she was saying was so stupid.
Right.
For instance, what was it? The classic one. Okay, so I don't even know how to...
we can hold on, because we're going to do a live stream eventually.
Okay.
And we'll talk more about it. And we're also going to eventually get to My Docket's video, and people get to see the hearing video, and that'll be a much better time to talk about it. So this...
Do you want to re-ask any questions?
Well, the only thing that I wanted to ask was, after your testimony, when you left the courthouse and you had to pick him up, go ahead and tell everyone what you did when you went to pick him up from school.
I am done. I'm done being questioned, cross-examined, and everything. And I'm sitting. I actually sit in the audience for a while, and I watch Monica be questioned or whatever. And then when it was appropriate time for me to leave to get Arnie, I skedaddle and head to Coral Academy in Reno to pick him up. I get there at the time they're supposed to be getting out of school, and I'm told that I can't pick him up any longer. That, in fact, the days that he is to be picked up by his father, he has to be picked up in the office because from now on, he was told that he has to wait in the office to be picked up. He's not allowed to be out with the other kids. He has to be isolated so that he can be supervised, so that this crazy stepmom can't come pick him up on days that aren't hers or whatever. So I was like, oh, that's not good. Oh, so they tell me that I'm in the office, and the office is telling me this, and I can see Arnie, and I'm like, oh, and he's like, Brittany, and I'm like, oh, baby, I'll be right back, okay? I'll be right back.
Yeah.
So I leave the office, and I'm like, you know what? This needs to get into the court. The judge needs to hear that this is going on right now.
Because we were still in court.
It gets me so worked up.
So let me go ahead and take over while you're recovering, because you're really worked up right now. But I'm sitting in court with my attorney, and we're still going at it. She's still being examined. She's still on the stand. And then all of a sudden, the judge gets kind of tapped. I don't remember if she was tapped on the shoulder or if her clerk kind of whispered at her, but all of a sudden I see the judge stop us. She goes and kind of tilts over, listens, and then the judge just looks at my ex with these just staring daggers at her, and the judge goes, did you tell the school that Ms. Falcone was not allowed to pick him up? And my ex, she turned white. She was like, I can't even describe to you how crushed she was. She knew that she was done for. And she said, I'm so sorry about that. I'm going to call the school right now. I'm going to let him know that she can pick him up. And the judge was like, you step outside right now and you go do that. And so my ex gets off the stand, goes outside the courtroom, and I just looked at my attorney, and we were like, she's done. She's just completely done. Anyway, at that point, you probably got a call from my ex, or the school maybe got a call from her. So what happened?
So I leave the office and I was like, this has to get into the courtroom. I have to get this in front of the judge. She's got to see what's going on. Even while they're in the fighting, it's still going on. She's not learning. So I was like, who am I going to call? I had no idea who to call. So the first thing I did was call the attorney's office, right? The Andrea's office. And I explained to a couple of the ladies and her staff what was going on. And they were like, let me make a phone call. And they get into the what is it called?
The chambers.
The chambers.
Yeah.
So the next thing I know, I was getting a call from Alex, I think after it was all done. No, I don't remember.
You probably got told
How
by
did
school first that you could go ahead and take them. I called you when we were completely done.
Okay.
So.
Oh, okay. So, I think what I did, I know. So I called the staff, and then the staff called me back and said, you're okay to go get Arnie out.
Yeah.
So,
what was the look on their faces when they saw you the second
oh my
time?
gosh, it was so funny. So I walk in, and I'm like, hey. So it just so happened to be his first grade teacher that was up there.
Yeah.
Mrs. Williams, who was instrumental in getting this started for us because she called CPS a couple times, or at least once on Monica. So she was standing up there, and I went to get Army, and I turned around to walk out, and me and her met eyes, and she just had the biggest smile because she saw me get rejected. She was up there when they were like, no, you can't take him. This is why. She has the background information, so it was just... It was a good point.
It didn't last long. That was about 1 day's worth of a pause. Probably, I haven't heard of the fact that all those things that you mentioned were just over within less than 24 hours. So what do we have here? Tell us, and I know these are out of order, but tell us about the role, your role that you felt as a stepmom. And I know you talked a little bit about it, but more specifically about how even from the beginning you didn't intend to cross the boundary of mom, or that you didn't intend to replace his mom.
Well, I had never had a child. I was a single woman in my 30s, my late 20s.
29.
Yeah. And that wasn't me. It just wasn't me. And I am very much for the child. So it doesn't do any good for a child to have a mother, a biological mother, and a biological father who seem to be involved, to have a stepmom come in or a stepdad come in and try to take over. And, it confuses things, and it makes conflict for the parents and confusion for the child. It doesn't, even then that made sense to me, right? So not only that, but I figured, stepmom is kind of equal to like the fun aunt, so I could have fun discipline a little as I see needed or whatever, but, it was kind of like the hard stuff was left for mom and dad,
Yeah.
So that's just...
Tell us about the move from Reno to Las Vegas and how much you thought that it would help for us to have that kind of distance between my ex and
Okay,
us.
so by the time we got to that point of moving, it was almost like it had to happen. There was no way to completely protect Army. I didn't even see much of a difference because the visitation schedule had changed, even though she was seeing him
Every other weekend, actually. She lost a lot of time.
Yeah, so even that was better, but he would still come back a little different.
Yeah.
He was an Army. And then even once we moved and we thought that would be good.
Well, she did come over like a crazy person a number of times early on, but eventually she just couldn't do it anymore. It took longer than I thought. She did last several months doing that, but even after a while, she just could not come over. So you mentioned something that actually didn't list as a question. Tell us about how when he came back from visits, he was different.
He was really disengaged and not a lot of eye contact when he talked to us. And I remember one time, he had that tick.
Yeah,
it was
tick.
so bizarre. That was a new one. It was like when he would talk, he would
like twitch his
head.
head.
It was, and we both were just looking at him like, Arnie, what's going on, bud? It was right after, it was actually when we were in Vegas and he came back from a Reno visit.
Yeah. Now, what sucks is at the time I didn't realize how bad it was. But now I think about that stuff and it makes me sick. Because to get to the point where you're seeing physiological reactions from the emotional trauma, it's like, it's got to be so bad. It's got to be so never-ending. That's the perfect word for it, never-ending. It's just a relentless, never-ending, crushing pressure. It just crushes your spirit. And as an adult, it affected me severely. I can't imagine how much it affected a helpless child. Let's move on to the next question. Tell about the time that you went to court with me when I had sued the Secretary of State. I had already, at this point, I hadn't won yet. You were going, that was the hearing where I won. So you came to me, or you came to court with me. You saw Secretary of State's attorney, Kevin Benson, and I can't remember if you went into that hearing with, I think you did. What did you think of that type of interaction, considering we were just barely together?
Yeah, you know, it was a long time ago, and I think
Yeah.
it was fairly brief and
Yeah.
anticlimactic.
Yeah.
Because, well, one, I think we were walking in and we saw the guy behind us, and I was like, no way, that's not him.
He's so young.
He was really young. So, but it ended up being him. And
Yeah.
I remember we went in there, and I remember it was Weller, right?
Yeah, I remember.
Judge Weller was like, yeah, we'll wait a few more minutes. And I remember in my head thinking, no, go now. But she might come. But she never showed up. So I don't...
My favorite was when District Judge Chuck Weller said, so I guess the only thing we have to do here is listen to the Secretary of State's defense. And and that attorney's like, the Secretary of State is not going to defend Ms. Farrar.
I don't remember that.
And he's... that one's going to be fun when we get to that one in the My Docket series.
Yeah.
Let's go to the next question. Tell about the time that you went to court with me, and she was held in contempt of court. And
So I was the moral support, I guess, because I wasn't actually in the courtroom when it happened. I just remember I was sitting out waiting. I remember talking to a gentleman that was really funny. And I was kind of telling him what was going on. And in the middle of me telling him kind of the ending of the story, I remember her walking out of the courtroom and she was crying or had been crying.
She had handcuffs on. She had to cry her way out of them. Okay, so general question. What did you think about District Judge Chuck Weller?
You know, I didn't have a lot of interactions with him. I wasn't involved too much, but he failed Army.
Yeah, he did.
I do know that. I don't know what judge in their right mind allows for a midnight exchange for, I don't even know how many years that was. That's not logical. It's not logical.
Yeah.
I mean, that alone.
What did you think about District Judge Bridget Robb?
I think she saved Army's life.
Yeah, she did. What did you think about the time District Judge Bridget Robb tried to sanction us $1,700 and the Supreme Court of Nevada overturned her decision?
You're going to have to refresh my memory.
Maybe we'll save that one for the live stream, but
Okay.
I remember you being kind of disappointed in her.
Oh.
That was sad. Because she'd done so much and then made such a stupid mistake.
Yeah.
Anyway, the Court of Appeals actually overturned her decision.
I remember that.
We'll get to that,
Yeah.
I guess, in the My Docket series. What did you think about, and this is actually a question from one of the viewers, this viewer is asking, how did we counteract the emotional abuse towards our son? And I guess you go first, and I'll mention what I think, I did.
So to counteract it, I guess the best thing we did is to let him completely decompress at our house when he was at our house. So in our minds, because we didn't know everything that was going on, we could kind of assume, or he could because of his experiences with the mother, but he thought that Army was constantly under this like compression
pressure
tool.
cooker.
Yeah. So when we would have him, we wouldn't I would be nice and cute and pick him up and talk about his day at school, but we never talked about what was going on at home. It was obvious that he wasn't allowed to talk about what was going on, and we weren't gonna add that pressure to him that she clearly added to him every time he would return.
Yeah.
So that was the first thing we did, is not pressure him, keep things fun. When he's at our house, we try to stay in a routine, even though it gets broken. It's so hard in the two houses, Tell him that he's loved constantly. When he gets punished, explain to him why. I guess that's that's the only thing we could do in the situation that we had at the time.
Yeah.
There wasn't a lot of communication between parents, and she was so easily hidden. Like, she was in the same city, but she hid where no one could find her. It's so bizarre. I mean, 3 CPS reports, not one of them found her, and then they dropped the case,
There were
of course.
6. No
Whatever.
one could find her,
One, you know, like,
yeah.
to not be able to locate the kid and just leave it at that. Oh, we can't find him.
Yeah. Yeah, it's crazy. Definitely, I mean, you said everything I was going to say.
Mm-hmm.
So I just saw it this way. She puts him under pressure. She stresses him out. So what am I going to do is I'm going to do
the opposite. That's
Yeah.
all you can do.
That's all you really can do. And it's not, I hate to say it, at the time I thought it was enough.
Mm-hmm.
But now, in hindsight, it's not enough. You have to win.
Mm-hmm.
It's crazy. They
And I
kill you.
wonder if we had put him in therapy at the time.
Would have failed. She would have interfered. In fact, the
that's
only
true.
time we made any progress was when District Judge Bridget Robb banned her from going to appointments.
That's true.
So, next question. Did the conflict ever... So this is a question from a viewer. Did the conflict ever test you two to the point that you felt as though your relationship would not make it?
The conflict with
With my ex.
No.
Okay, that's good. I would have been surprised if you said yes, but...
No.
I guess it just goes down to how we handled it. But I think we should talk about that more during the live one.
okay.
I mean, go ahead if you want.
You were amazing. Anytime I was stressed out, or I always could vent to you, but it's like I didn't even have to tell him how to handle it. He, like, did it. He didn't let her walk all over him.
Yeah.
Times where I was like, I can't believe you're gonna let that. He's like, don't worry about it. You know, that's not how you handle it. You know, he would handle it the right way, and he got it done. Where most of us would yell and scream and send those nasty emails back, he
Get absolutely
didn't.
nowhere.
He would respond simply, make his point, and leave it. And it was like, for me at the time, it was like, oh my god, you know, I wanted to pull my hair out.
You didn't know I was playing chess. But,
Well, yeah, I
That's
didn't.
going into the next question. Tell us about how you felt when her parental rights were terminated.
I think I was lightheaded. I didn't think that it would have happened.
Yeah.
It was so much pressure leading up to it. And then, you know, the added pressure of the day before the hearing and then during the hearing, it was just, was almost like...
What did you think when District Judge Jennifer Elliott terminated her parental rights in less than 2 minutes?
Wait, the first question was about Jennifer Elliott, wasn't
Well,
it?
that was the moments leading up to the termination of parental rights.
Oh, okay. I was thinking of Rob as anyway.
Right,
so
so
the TPR. How did I feel when it happened?
Yeah.
You know, by the time it happened, it felt like it was already that way.
Yeah.
She had disappeared for 6 months, and even prior to her disappearing, Arnie and I had grown so close. I mean, it was, for whatever reason, it was so interesting, and we can talk about it more on the live, like you said, but it was so interesting as we moved to Vegas, the way he opened up more. He would say things that would just floor me.
Yeah. So the next question is, tell us about how you felt when the decree of adoption was entered.
It was amazing. It was like we didn't have to worry anymore. There were several times during this whole thing where I would think, oh my God, what, after we were married, what would happen if Alex died? And I had no legal right to see Arnie. And
I want to pause you there. Technically, you could, but it's very rare. Most people don't try and do it, but you can file.
She would have made it so hard and so miserable.
Yeah, for you to litigate against it.
Yeah.
But I don't want to make it so that people think it's impossible.
Got it.
Keep going. Yeah.
In my opinion, in my thought at the time, it was like, there's just no way. I'm a stepmom, you know. And he was going to go back to that horrible situation. So that was always over in my mind. So as soon as that adoption was legalized, it was just like, oh, you know, I don't have to worry about that. And she can't come back and fight anymore. I guess she could.
No, she
but
can't.
now she can
She
if
can't
she
even
wants.
file.
Oh, good.
The adoption it annihilates even her right to approach the court.
I know Arnie was so happy.
Yeah.
You could tell he had so much lifted off of him, which was so
Weird.
interesting to me. I remember one time he was talking about how, I don't remember exactly what, but I was trying to empathize with him. And I was like, you know, I understand it's tough, baby, and, you know, maybe in the future, I don't remember how I said it, but I just remember him saying, I don't want to talk to her anymore. And I was just taken back because I've had issues with my own mother, and even when I was younger and we weren't getting along, I would never have said, I don't want to talk to her. I don't want anything to do with her.
Yeah.
You know, you always yearn for that. Mm-hmm. So to hear him just be like, I don't want to talk to her. Brittany, I don't want to see her anymore. Brittany, I'm like, okay.
No.
You know, we got him into therapy and we learned more about the situation, but it was just, I didn't expect that. Usually
even the psychologist didn't think it was right. It took him a long time to realize it. I remember that after a long time, he didn't understand it. He, even to this day, probably doesn't understand it.
The lack of disconnect?
The lack of any desire at all.
Yeah.
I don't think he's ever seen it before. Okay, so I guess we're going to talk about it a lot more when we get to the live stream. I can't even remember how many subscribers are needed before you do that, but it is on the website for anyone who's curious. Just click on the upcomings tab, and I will see you guys next time.